Welcome to the Kelly Writers House here on the campus of Penn State. Oh, love that joke. Never get tired of it. Well, repetition. We have a broadside for sale. Henry, you want to maybe show that? And yeah, I think we should bring one in. And maybe you can speak about this.
So I made...
This is a broadside.
It's a broadside.
That is a poster or ephemeral object printed on one side of a piece of paper from small to large.
Well, you just
In
took
this
most
case,
of the
done
things to
with
say about it.
letterpress printing.
So yeah, so this is printed with wood type and lead type, and it's the poem stilled in, and they cost $10 a piece, and they're being sold.
$15, but for you today.
One-time
If you
offer,
get them,
$10. Call now, and only now. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. It's a lovely poem, and
Get it before they sell out. These will be selling for, in symbolic terms, more and more as the day goes by. But Henry just spent hours and hours working on this overnight with this beautiful poem of Maggie O'Sullivan. So put that there. It's a pleasure to welcome Maggie O'Sullivan back to the Kelly Writers House, and she'll be reading also on April 4th in New York. She's come for these two readings from Yorkshire in England. And we have on sale, and I think a lot of you will already have this, a selection of her work, body of work. But I'd also recommend that on the Eclipse website, there's a beautiful scans of many, I think 5 or 6 of her earlier works, which always involve a kind of color, visual overlays with the poems, and you can see those page for page in beautiful versions. So it's nice to read those in conjunction with this and separately, but to see the original books, all of which were in very small runs and otherwise impossible to get. And also at Penn Sam, we've accumulated lots of readings of Maggie, and I think for some of you who just have read her work on the page, it opens up an entirely new experience of the work when you do hear it, as you will today. Since I wrote the foreword to this, and it's been published and online, and it's in this book, and some of you will have read that, I'm not going to repeat what I say there, but keeping in mind the combination, which happens every year, of Passover and Easter, I thought to sort of take on the road not taken as an evangelical minister, and to talk about the power of the Word, and if you can read the Word, and what happens when the Word goes beyond the literal thing on the page and takes on flights, not just of angels, but of also devils, of demons, of monsters, of saints, and just of everyday people, of the landscape, of those things that fly, of those things that crawl on the ground, of those things that are under the ground, all somehow emanating from words which by themselves just seem dead, lifeless, just inanimate objects seemingly disconnected one from another, and yet put together with the animation of poetic spirit. They provide a possibility not otherwise available in our everyday lives. Maggie O'Sullivan has followed a very severe route as a poet. From living in London and working with the BBC, she moved to the north into a stone cottage that she lived at. I was just saying to her that I always think of her in the movie Wuthering Heights, which and she says there's a new version of Wuthering Heights. Well, I was thinking of the woman on the moors with the hair blowing, and she says actually that is correct. And we actually have a picture. One picture I've seen of her, there is a picture of her hair blowing on, and she assures me that this was not done with wind fans, but with the actual wet air of the North and of the moors. But the work has that haunted spiritual quality to it. And she's lived in relative solitude in that area, working on her verbo-visual excursions into the impossible. And met Maggie in the mid-1980s, and her work has been a great companion to me for my life as a poet. And she's one of the people I feel closest to in my life as a poet. And so it is my great pleasure to have her here at Penn and to welcome her.
I've got a stack of papers. There's a lot more. It just looks very intimidating, but it isn't. I hope not anyway. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Charles. Can you all hear me? Thank you. Thank you, Henry, for the beautiful realization of my poem. You've done an absolutely splendid job. Thank you so much. And for all your labours of love. I've got a little list of what I might do here. But first of all, I'd like to say thank you, everybody, for Charles and the Kelly Writers House for inviting me here. It's a great privilege for me to be here because the podcasts and the whole Penn recordings is an absolute lifeline to me. But I was saying to Charles earlier, it's very strange to watch videos of other poets reading here, and now I'm here. So I'll take the thing off. Can you hear? Can you hear at the back?
Bend it down.
Bend. Is that better? Oh, lovely. Thank you. Now, I've got one here. I think I'll start with this one. It's a working through of Apollinaires, Les Fenêtres, from Poems of Peace and War, 1913 to 1916. And it's, although I've lived, as Charles has described, in a very remote area, this is very much a homage to a city poem, to a city. And Apollinaire's poem has got 37 lines in it, but I've kind of improvised on those 37 lines as a basis for a kind of riff that goes in and out of those lines. From red to green dye all the yellows. Macaws sing their own forests. Massacre of peahees. Macaws sing, sound a poem to the fabulous one-winged bird whose flight is joined to another. Fabulous one-winged bird, T-R-A-U-M-A, drowning in typos. How can we sleep? Begotten, begot, bigorno lot. How can we sleep? Bigorno lot. Multiple soleil et leur son du cochon. Do you love me? You'll raise the curtain. We'll upload it. Now the window's open. O myriad labourage, sapphire slang, black swans. Now the window's open. Beautiful fath pallor, honourable violet, sapphire oronnier, black swans. Beautiful fath pallor, honourable violets, oronnier. Time equals liberty equals white shadow hankied noses in his own pixelated imminences. Winkles in shell, multiple suns, sea urchins. O sunset starting at midnight equals liberty equals yellow boots. boots, winkles in shell, little blue pixelated imminences, puis multiple suns, sea urchins, oh sunset, puis topaz yellow boots, I dream, puis plified city of towers, towers accelerate streets, city of towers, wells, squares, wells, squares, wells, peahees, 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 but one wing, hollowed out the trees blossoming, bekissed, yeah, dark women, brown men, wail, wail harmonica licks to brown girls, wah, wah, geese trumpeting northward, where raccoon hunters scrape the gleaming pelts. Towers accelerate streets, glittering wells, wells, squares, Vancouver, Vancouver, where the white train of snow and night fires flees the winter. Wah, wah, geese trumpeting northward, oh Paris, peahees, peahees, oh Paris, from red to green dye all the yellows, puis from red to green dye all the yellows. Paris, Vancouver, you are here, the Caribbean, New York, but one wing, O earth, Paris, Vancouver, you are here, the Caribbean, New York. The window opens in orange, O earth, hollowed out the trees blossoming, bekissed, yeah, beautiful, the window opens in orange, to full beautiful, to full fruit of light, to full fruit of light. And this is made by Veer Books out of the Birkbeck College, University of London, and it was the first Veer publication. It's on my website if you want to have a look at the images. And All Origins Are Lonely. It's for Arakawa and Madeline Ginns. And the title, All Origins Are Lonely, is from Birds, chapter 21, in Helen Keller or Arakawa by Madeline Ginns. Immersed ramp carnal thicknesses, plover bodying, water's vertical stance I lean differently into. Scale askew, seized re-aspirate, non-stepping most flight, frag orange, twist and snap. Anatomical vestments, halter-skelter, slowly to draw couched gasps, this radial and counting doesn't fall so. Gardenia, fur, technician, in a hyphenated instant, haphazard unclenchings, irreversible, almostness, unpinioned sable. Dwell, measure, amply greeted, to begin a journey, enunciate the sky, how they land in me, roughed in apportionings out, rotations mistake, pressed synaptic, waver without leash, iridesce, and still the hair's rosying cleave, silver, cha-cha, infancy, magpies, phoneme positionings, cognizing turnabout, hubs it let loose, bathing carnations as a multi-level mapping of longings we never arrive at. And I wrote a little blurb for Arakawa and Ginns for making dying illegal, and I'll just read that. Uncompromising, trans-swayful formations, cradle and field, an offer of whole body capabilities, eventing, evidencing, assembling procedures, compassioning many scales of action at once, this radical visionary interrogatory project, out-sanctioning its multidimensionality, unsettling, re-annewing my heart, calling open to how much has been left out into being fearless, courageous, which to my joy is now. Can you still hear okay? I feel a bit kind of trapped behind this microphone because I'm so small. Can you see me? Yeah. This is from Murmur, which also came out from Veer Books. I sound like an advert for Veer Books, but they've done 3 of my books. And this is quite a highly visual piece. And I just want to read a little section from it to give you some kind of idea. Startles. Penumbral whip, whip up, skin lifting, ingress broken, ished respirations inconstructed. Inertial, accumute stances, misgiving, traction, averse, rehaunting, lunar carcassing, caressing, to ear-inged, empt, raged, a palatal, banquet, enunciative, refusal, suscitation, recur, edge, ill chiz, ill braid, fleshed, dimensionalizing, star slope, clul, staunch, affix, abut, laceration, the loss, inert, incline, flare, false, raw, plunge, failure, ill chiz, startles, affix, abut, concave, inconstancy, disperimeter, wind bite, binding, impossible, directives, withereds, obstacle, misalign, wizards, alert, abides, no ripple, hardening, delay, slabs, reverse, vaulting, no leave, letting, leave, taking, expanse, besieged, further, align, robes, attached, lest I. If you picked up a shell now, incising, usurping, irrecoverable buoy of bearers, bearers braiding hammer, blue intricateliness, blue dice earring, revenance tincture, dominoes, acoustic, acuities, ill-edged, discrepant, loss recly, thised, dissolving, to solve this, depend, fan, dent, clipped, echo, split, butcher, sinew, slurring, aqua, dismal, dent, spit, depicted, pirouette, celestial, footing, rethread, vigil turned, excrescence, traipsing, choked ashore by what starkest approximate plaiting, iris parting, amber stutter behalves, open, compose, leaf go, sing tremble songs, rook pliancy, luminanting mercuries, mercies, leaf nailed on the waves, nailed on the unheard and inaudible selves, thrones only, and the boulder made copious, bruty, fissuring. I'm reading a whole range of stuff from sort of early to right up to a few days ago. And I did 2 books that comprise a project called Her Story I, which draws on my Irish background. And this is Waterfalls, and it came out in a limited edition as a paperback, but has been reissued as a hardback, but it's been reissued as a paperback. So in honour of that, I shall read one from here. And there are 5 texts in the book, and they're interwoven with some ink drawings. I'll read That Bread Should Be. That bread should be was one of the oft-repeated phrases during the Great Irish Famine of 1845 to 52, that bread should be so dear and human flesh so cheap. on Shkabarin, Shkiabretne, Shkiborian, Shkibor, Ushkebrian. Low ground, long black crape rolled in the mouth-threshing gleam and misty blood dripping so many red threads. The maps are become. How'd soak, what hacked, what shatters, round, round as an O's hoop scouring vowels. My hand, his rounds rosary buckled, saying decades shone blue, going up to the small handy little farm, the father's house, every stone, every stump bled, run through consonant of hearth, dead twigs, air uneven, armfuls left standing, ash it is of an age with the house, its knee-deep unbroken singing, its acred heart's umbilicus chirruping, that shielding ash of memory bleeding, seesaw fearments, eared-eyed bow siblings of no fixed song, scattered anywhere but I, half-starved, half-clothed, half-eaten by half any speech, half any rip in the sky's blue mantling rag for an O, dragged out of their stairs, their own filthy rots hanging, scream sticks, white skull over bone, sewing it over. Lapwings take my cold piping, ill-ailed, iller, illed, shrap and feral toolings, sings, why scarlet uncoiling, was it sea rail of skulls red dicing, entrail here entrails, asks she in of axe. Where for the axe if I've, unsinging not, sound no, neither going about of a story or shows that I to do I, neither assimilated nor middle of no, tunes keeping me unsteady, blood leaks, rackety plume never heard. Seeing eye of the story counts, yet it is tilted, rigged, dragging at the hemorrhage of uns. My body sever, who shall she see? Skulls kinged out in the rain, and back on the wind would come the tottering twist, stank, bone-jointed, retwining its own circle. What way a horse can fall, this many? The fitness of names, spittle in a crock, recarving the spells, so many's red loud ear, red hooves, ruby live beaten thing, soft red south so. My belly, my throat, sick sundering heap, a crimson talking backwards, gripping for a way against the abscessed cottage, struggling with sun pulled up, few scrapes of the shovel, searching in our soils the lot of long silent letters, searching, peeling it off the rended spine, severed, laid bare the narrative eye, singing, wire nettle in the mouth, unevenly and acute, the jagged narrow vertical roofed over with sticks and wild cresses, drawing stones all day on a few ribs to the moon. My guts trail out my eyes and the mucks are thronging wet. Magpies' black feet slap their brink on the stems, not a ground I tread, cavity sippling the blight that is stemper the. Whole families without a trace my dealt. It occurs, the unstory that bread should be, songs bleeding wove, never more crow, scraping centuries, a century's hard plain howl, their kids leaping the house askance, stalking chieftain's bird, that's how we spelled back in I, beast moan, broached breaths, cold straw, little boats, many a one out on the hills in exact shimmer, their shoulder and drank, drove air, raven, ravenous, ravine, remnants, hair going up, down, buds, gone so, rocks to us. And I'll do another short one from here. Own land. If of off chance birth being, bing, bing, black as blackbird in spring, dandelion prongs, da down, owned it, shin, did so. coat sleeves pebble, lopely fetches, peeps trembling, nor skein of all reek, nor heel nor air of snarls, nor next nor near doubly sped and rotting, nor sub hue, nor saddle, nor housings countenance her tossing, nor so is, was so, Knov shawling, torrents, littlest stared into, ever so little less as flies, word for thrived, leapt, it was hers, jumped the ravine, driven crimson skiffs, hearses, rehearses, leaps into be up all of a bar, baked down banks, bockety brags, blighted, marred, spoiled, happened, said, bright bronzy shone slants, own beast, puckered moons, lopped, a pole, poet who'd be a vitu, weaver of spells, era, hey-go, merry-go, higgledy, hurling, remembrancer, herited, heritage, heretic, heresies, here she is, her is, in here it, inheritances, in here she dances, crabbit, crawsick, corhig, chaw, dwinderings, daubings, dedent, down around her, didn't her, up everyone in a combing and songing and combing, the fretty, pestered shunts. Quag edge ear loan. The beginning uses the language matter of John Clare's wonderful poem To the Snipe. Quag edge ear loan, quakes mute, sittest in vest, thriving swell, hilling thy bill, suited doth jellied mayhap, dressed desolate mystic ocean's thread remotest stag pervades, ear unventured gazed, dread breath hiding wild restless evermost tempests each sight, power heartens roughest wave. Yet shun skulking tepid stride flings loss, and sinky streaking fringed free slay, cracking reach thou stretch still thy love, I solitude's unbounded, heart dignifying sky, smile, fly cordial, thine each is, 'tis that. What there is, it is sown a restifless fault line to the next suffuse token to stoop, to mislose, to go spinning, with now these proportions, now those as made by waves over the heart, brokenly tremble how the land is returned, collidering, betraced, coveted, blinded out of the tearing, pearl as in ear in ochreous cinnabar. In ravine bailed a or an an, in pluck, in humid plash this must seem, and the stairs lead nowhere, naught. Emptied, it ating pass overfed, gleams track to poly murmurs, lived bibbing wrench. Vertingeny seared, or is it sealed? The nights did did I, oceanic road to the tooks. You sing the river, you wish. Shredding brittle pie-wipe stars, coast dance in scattered, pervaded thou these year, elysiansed, inertial, re-chiselled, pull, degra, to do, did, are you sure? Nothing surer than tears as a spring wind drives a feather, curved macula fugitive cropping in gestitudes low, untreated Gretas as are here, are being killed, disprecautious arithmety shaken, a throw should we see, incisional to thymic, barb, aboding, all goes back, dissension to death today, fire sign, forward blade stance, no shots never choose, sliveth dispre imi beating of the jugular parting wild horses, cities that sang, little blue fish of the Prussia cove, two fled, barriered in birdsong around me, in circuary feathering cohort, italictured convulsionist. Read the yellow pages when you don't know what you want. Would a yellow do? Disown the stage, cry, expose the lie. Who owns the starve, cold call out, odalisque fragmentary, could lose is warp of stammer broken, cannot easily is aversive, lit sits of tears. Bare tree sent to slaughter, try to speak to what will happen to that life full already eaten. Sing the instant, this instant, the instant is. Recarnage, disjourneying, skid, fang, dagger, truant machinic suspect flooded, purer aches the diffs or darkest letter. Say goodbye, say goodbye, say goodbye, say belong to precious dog in turning. Say goodbye, say goodbye, say goodbye, say belong, the sun belongs to. Muteness, abattoir lorries, this purple meowing. Who owns the trees' wild songs, this song, my own song, underheld beast. Drip down, dispaled habitué selvage. Interval, rescue, riches, crouch, yellow floristic scampered antiphon. To fly in, the sun belongs to, nor pour the sea, but not this feather, nor pour the sea, but not this feather. And this is stilled in the wonderful work that Henry has made so really vitally for me. Stilled in, 7 flutes, lemon tree blazes, necrotizing even occurred, slip jigs, horse gamut, conjectural stars, parrying in augured in jaws, a fray spat, thus to fur, slid as surge. Tangerine spangled tango interpetilated, came in breathing dark sky, skying land of hazels, blood red the trail of the breath, stitching body sick for home, carrying spelling mistakes, the earring light, bather groves as sacred flounderous so. And circles from which this was written for the Salt Companion to Charles, and circles from which are the last 3 words in Charles's Asylum, and it's collaged from Charles's poem. This then, there is it here severing, disfigurement, mansion's voice, taboo inversely escape, at vocabulary, soto, boundary, nuance of vowels, error, lapsed, quietness is, outside, wands, one, tissue defile, bird slang, given mutinies, angles, broken chromatic plateaus, misdeeds marked or, refusal dances, pulled failure, circles from which. They're all like this because I need to organise them into some sort of a book. I think. Courtship of lapwings. Call it, calls over, calling over, call. What calls it? Weaving, watching, spinning, cutting, wheeling, shaping, shining, tying, pondering, rinsing. Spun to tilt, incisions sieved, incisions feathered, agile opulence, scaffolded on chain, pieta incompliances, inverted falconous lupo data and tarry no longer, pelted mishaptic prevouring, unburied my tongue, my heart, unquelled disport pulsational shifters, gold rose leaf, lavish imperfection, my tongue leaking mischance, perpetual disvividation, locations consort, inarticu, the courting moment punctured, shoaling, white, red ribbons, thine ears streaming, my arms around you, listening circletage, whose circulations, bouquetist, beauteous, pinnacle blisterant, incessant foliations, betrothal, steadfast lustration, hinge, edge, incisions, shadow, scalding, dislocutions, refuge, cliffed intrication, indigence bidden in the watch, the looping bleeds, entombing call. What song is it the day is at? Winding white feathers, ear embracing, heart involuble apertures, contestations, dislocatory retinal excess, intervolving splint to plunge vestigiated, drowning strings the sharper glisten awake, recalling, calling over, scalp pull, meta wrapping lesion, domed erasure, erosion in promise to traces transadjacent, colloquing contin coils coveil cogency. Distrained bower edgtions, angelus miasma stases, unletilations, atricious jaggy harmonica scalding, mutation startles, blotted whirl bright orange beadances nettage, meta broken in lie, denote disavow imbricative fragments, reversal, pulling through, pull out, lettering taps, seriality, profersinsture, scalplantiant, yoked in erantivity, tear, earring decotoils, house dance neath low notes, bleed the striven, ill gleams into cried. What call it? Down thrown, unstoppered, this dislettering, uncease, wounds winding, unwinding, cloaked occupation, cradling, clasp it, breached, drained, canyoning, darkness breaks, acoustic equation, ransoming, beglyph into want or depart, oscillate, resonance, re-piercing, blooding on between held, ladening, lit, leaved by tear and claw, coil in oystering, in isled, calling over, unfurling a golden candle, my heart buried in a song's wing. And some sort of fragments. Why goosebone? Them ropes lair readying gold thirstiest dark to ragged doom or stave, crow do string it, slicing quills from feathers, slicing as if snow had fallen into the fell to, the clearing of the felling of had fallen into, legible or able animalations in her errant, who hears, so unbearable for mercy, then silence. Soaring crows is silence, at the lard is silence. Curtailed, countervailing, given only thorn exist, entitled how does dance, blackbird you rent and habitat averring, afforded veil blood succumb, stances in a crev hid, would ask you to, I can't be sure, bring myself, couldn't bring myself, mistaken, no mistake is being known, no begins, begs in, ephemeral arise at, you sing and singe, the fabric is in failure, I bright underfoot, it sings, you sing, sings throstle nest was divided, restead bather to blossom, throstle nest was disdivided, some years magnetite enclosures, knife arches that yellow, jagged, gigantic heart galloping in the sea. Trains of beasts, I was hung on a hook, nails with fingers on them. My tongue is in scars, my whole tongue, you are wearing it. Remains, disdains, devoid, exlighted Asian, talon symmetry wastes, or did I? Embodied body, or has in noise, nail bloodings, meat powders, the fasting unto, or silent, rolled or scraped, trickles, bleeds, down slopes, scattered rise, pied, the winging. Just a couple more. Continuance, sifted, panned, sieved, so close to, stuttered, wrote, sang, all the flaws Tivon foreshadow could and could not. No screams, no blood, too dark to film now. Seizures took, the ravens are, a whiteness opens. Detorary swarming bifurcates contra context, torn by, torn from, slaughtered out of restead unjoints, saying it over, you make me say it over, shoring construct, those black hills in the blazing moon is a stone, they are crushing the stones, crushing the flesh within the feather, crushing the meat dress is raw, meat dress dries, abattoir crucial to refusal only to, they are crushing the sheepfold. O spiral whitening the sulphur, need poems are, come in as you are coming in, and then, as your wave of killings, no, waves it is a fish trying to call us, cannot be torn by, drowning to drink. The yellow plume, the yellow plume, the yellow plume, this blue plume, this earth, sang the hair of the sorceress, and then it sought the bone. So this is the last one then, placard of the candle. Rim in throw maims, pluck and to plaw, immaimed, and to maim, implored. Discards mishold of dip crows in black flying, made soak the flattened turn and no turn. Low plinth, white bog I bit, temper of grief, of breakage on the sufferance of kinetic. Whose Anne, whose scrawl is, whose animal, whose scrawl, rised at birth, swallows skim the sorrow, and every to help kill, in slants, circages, beckon, citation, insisted, insist, heard, in heard, wading. Was what that what happened was, as is fasting unto. Who did this, who is a substance, does, do, there are no, does not, is a substance, lost is a substance, left is a substance, weep is a substance, unwell is a substance, difficult is a substance, not in it is a substance, weep to be able to, and we did, stuttering into stars. This earth is a substance, flaring is a substance, moorland is a substance, memory is a substance, loving is a substance, rising, ascending lapwings is a substance, So that's it, thank you. Yes.
And then Maggie's going to come back here after. You're all welcome if you want to come to a class, and we will be talking to you for another hour or so after the reception. Everybody is welcome. And some of you have to come. But this part, let's see if anybody has some preliminary. And there's a mic
Hi. I just was wondering what inspires some of your work. What inspires you to write? Anything in particular? I mean,
Everything.
like everything, every day, something.
Being alive.
Just being alive, yeah.
I don't know how else I could be here if I didn't do this work. But I mean, at a kind of practical, physical kind of level, the place where I live, and language, of course, and the visual arts, many things. I don't want to limit them, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I'm really glad you read Our Origins Are Lonely. I went over the piece today, and the images, the illustrations, and the order and the tale I think that they're telling, which I think is, to me, is a sad story, are fantastic. What makes you decide to add a visual component to your poems, or is it almost there's a visual component and a poem comes? Could you talk about which chicken or both chickens come from?
Well, each work is completely different. It has its own sort of needs and demands and pressures. But with All Origins Are Lonely, those images came simultaneously with the language. I worked on both simultaneously. And I think that has been one of my most kind of thoroughly integrated pieces in terms of the visual and the verbal, although they alternate on the pages. But in my approach and in my consciousness, they were, and in the time span that I was working on them, they were very much together. In that I was cutting up words, bits of words, and working with the images. And one of them is a blue feather. It's an actual, real blue feather, and there's a goose wing feather there as well, which I found. So they were all spread out together, images and the words, and also constructing the images from raw material. Is that sufficient? Mm.
Thank you for that wonderful
Hello.
reading. When you started, you mentioned being happy to be here at Penn, and of
Yes.
course we're so thrilled that you're here.
Thank you.
But I'm very interested in how you approach this particular reading, this fantastic stack of documents that you have, and how you navigate, you said from the earliest works up until a few days ago, how do you navigate that personal archive and compile the kind of reading that you presented tonight? Going through, more historical works, or what is that process of compilation like for you?
It's a very good question, very good question. Well, I do a compilation for every reading I do, trying to think of what might be appropriate, but I always do kind of edit out when I get here. Through nerves. There's another little pile down here that never got read. I was going to read some earlier ones by John Clare to link in with the later bit, but I decided to drop that. All kinds of things come into play in the navigation of the poems. Well, for instance...
We like because we have to record it, right?
Yes.
So we have to set a recording.
Right.
Now we can have you talking about what the nature of
Yes.
the status of each of those
Yes.
things is as
Yes.
if they're a book. I really appreciate that.
Well, for instance, with the Apollinaire one, I thought that would be appropriate because of my interest in the visual and the verbal, and Apollinaire is a hero of mine. Also, I know that he's one of the poets you've probably been engaged in. He's a very important poet. And then the John Clare, because he was an early love of mine, but also because it's kind of the opposite of Apollinaire, really. So I'm looking for some danger there as well in the navigation. And different soundings, which is very difficult to personally assess when you're kind of devising what pieces to read. Different soundings, different textures, different lengths. And today I've done lots of kind of excerpting, like the Murmur work is a very long work. I predominantly work in the long work. Murmur is a long work, and the Her Story I is composed of 2 books, and I have read just those 2 books together at one reading. But I think for this reading I've tried to be as broad as I can to give some kind of sense of what I do. I'm not sure if it works, but it, you know.
You mentioned before, in response to an earlier question, about using the raw material, and I was wondering if you could speak about your process of collage and editing and deletion or rearrangement, and how you go about taking the raw material of language and creating your what almost at times look like musical scores on
I
the
do
page.
think so, yes. Well, I use language from everywhere, and I break into words. I use compound words, neologisms, and in the more recent work, I've done a lot more breaking down. I feel they're more fractured. That is something I'm very, very preoccupied with. What happens when you fracture language? So I gathered from all different sources, and just, I guess, go into them, break into them, to see what I can retrieve. Is that sufficient?
Hi. After reading your body of work and now hearing you speak, I mean, it's pretty clear that you have a very distinctive, almost fragmented writing style and reading style. I'm just curious as to how this style has developed over the course of your life as a poet, and was it something that was just natural to you, or did it come as a result of experimenting with other styles of writing?
Well, it has emerged through a life of writing. I don't think you can predict how your work is going to, where it's going to end up. I just feel I have to be I have to be there with language, and with it wherever that will take me. Just to say about the fragment, I think the fragment is very powerful. Because it goes away from completion and perfection, and there's so much more power in the sounds and textures and the spaces and silences of fragments and the suggestions, and there are many things that make. I mean, the poets who have inspired me and continue to inspire me, and the life that I have and am living. Because when you set out, I've been writing. Well, I've always been writing, although I didn't know what it was. I just wrote as a child. I drew and I wrote. But my first poems, I think, started at about 19, and they were more conventional, concerned with colour and imagery, but they were never traditional. I've always been very dissatisfied with conservative formal poetry. I just felt it even at 19, I feel it wasn't what I needed to say. Something different. I had to make my own language. That wasn't enough for me. And so that's how it's happened, and how the life evolves. I lived in the city in London for 19 years with my partner, and then we moved up to the Yorkshire moors, very wild, rural really wild existence. So all this, everything is, embedded in the work, and the work is embedded in that life too. And also, as a poet, the work. I'm always finding new work to inspire me, new poets, and I return to the poets of my early inspirations as well. It's the most wonderful journey. It's perpetually new and exciting. I'm always always intoxicated. The intoxication never stops with poetry. You find a new poet, a new poem, or you go back to ones you've read before, and they're new because you have changed and the poem has changed. But I also love music, and I love the visual arts, and the world that I live in of the moorland, the kind of aesthetics of ecology is something that very concerns me, and what we can do in our lives to help save the planet. This wasn't there when I was 19, but it's it is coming. It is seeping up through the life.
I guess this is in the same territory as some of the other comments and questions. I was very struck by much of what you read, but especially that phrase you introduced one of the poems saying this is from the language matter of John Clare, I think is what you said.
I did.
Yeah,
I did,
yeah.
Bob. Yes.
And that notion of language matter, I'm hoping to get you to say more about it, because I get the feeling it's not the same thing as language, like our ordinary conversation right now. We're not speaking language matter exactly. So I guess the question is something like, can I get you to talk about the struggle to, perhaps this is over dramatic, but Madame Curie, and to try to get some sort of essence out of ordinary speech and language and verbiage, and to isolate language matter as you perceive it. I don't know if you want to have that. That makes it radioactive, and maybe we don't want that. But does that make any? Is there some glimmer of interest in that question of how you get from the ordinary conventional sea of print and BBC, everything around you, to
yes,
what
received
we hear?
regular, transactional, everyday language.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like a painter uses paint. I very much regard language as it's a material to work with, a fabric.
But isn't it sort of the opposite? Because not that I paint, although I know some painters very well, but the tube of paint is pure already. It's very concentrated, cobalt blue. It's like the purification or the intensification has happened, and you use that to make the painting. But in your case, it's like the opposite. It's like you're trying to create, so to speak, not a tube of paint, but a bit of something as concentrated linguistically as
maybe a
paint.
new pigments.
Okay. And so
I'm looking for new pigments, new.
And then about in the sense of like shop talk, do you fracture and recombine and meditate? Do you get irritated and just rip things up and use the pieces? How does it happen? I'm sure it happens differently, but how are some of the ways it happens?
Well, it happens differently for each piece, I think. I often hear phrases or lots of pieces in my ear, and so that's one kind of input. Another is from my reading materials. Things. I don't want to sound like a clairvoyant, but things leap out at me. If I'm reading, I don't know, say whatever it is, I don't often read at the transactional level. I read at I see the texts, the language as I see it physically and orally, and as texture. I think maybe there's something wrong with me.
And texture means what?
I can feel it.
Syntax?
I can feel the weight of.
Okay.
I can
It
feel.
can be a big word or a little word.
Yeah.
Either one of those could be heavy or could be light.
It's feeling. Feeling has a lot to do with it. This sounds very esoteric, but it is. It's how I read. And then words seem to have their own kind of inner attractions, how they combine or recombine, and I often just mess about with them and see what happens. So I often try to keep myself. I let it do the work. This. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
A room of poets. I mean, does that make sense to anybody? Does it?
I'm just newly familiar with your work, which is why I came out to the reading, because I had really never read anything like your work before or seen anything quite like it. It was very, very attractive to me, even though it was not something that was easily understood. The same with your reading. But
It's not to do with understanding.
Right, right. But when the way you just, I don't even have a question.
That's good.
I'm working toward one.
I don't want to question.
No, I think that the way you just spoke about language as matter, as material, plus you've talked about music and the visual arts. So I think that it helps, at least it helped me feel a little bit more of what you're doing in the work.
Yes.
I think that when I read it, I realized there was no point in trying to understand it, though there are moments of clarity, for sure. So I just wanted to say that your explanations have been very helpful and make me want to read more and even look at it as a physical thing.
Absolutely, yes,
Even
that's
more.
good. Physical.
So
Poem, it's physical,
Yeah.
oral, sonic, all the levels that it suggests.
Right, it's unique too. I mean, I haven't read very many other writers doing what you're doing, and it's a very refreshing change from the typical poem, which I'm always stuck in.
Yes.
And would love to find another way out of. But you offer an example of that, a great example of that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you.
So let us stop here and have a reception. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
thank you. Thank you.